Thank you all. We're going to go to our second portion of the night. We have Amar up here. I'll get him to introduce himself in a minute. But, Bryce had one massive exit, had lots of experience. Amar's had multiple exits and has a different perspective on what it takes to get to an exit, what to do when you're selling, and we'll go through that today. So first, Amar, maybe give us a high-level overview of your background.
Sure. So thanks everybody for coming. I know coming out in the snow is tough. Taking your evening away is tough. Grinding through all these speakers will be tough. Maybe not. Beer will be good. But look, I'll give a quick intro on myself. My hope tonight is for everybody who spent the time and effort to come here to introduce myself, get to meet others, and vice versa, and for you to walk away with something useful. It might be a lesson learned, might be a connection, something, and I think this is a great forum, and kudos for putting this together. So, real quick, my name is Amar. I'll fast forward to some things that I think. I went to school at Waterloo. I did a degree in engineering there. I moved to Silicon Valley after school. I worked in the semiconductor industry, worked on probably one of the most boring projects ever in my first job, what I thought was the computer interface department. And it turned out to be the USB department. It just wasn't called USB yet. So a few of those flying around now. So it's always nice to see projects you've worked on over time kind of be something. So that's an example of getting exposure to things early and kind of seeing them take off with explosiveness. Worked at a few startups in the Bay Area, moved to Toronto to join a VC firm called Vengrowth. It was $1 billion firm back in the day. It was a great place to learn. So I really do cherish the time there for the learning. After that, I started two things. I started Extreme Venture Partners, which I then sold 5 years later. I started Extreme Labs, which coincidentally I sold 5 years later. Almost they were back to back. Extreme Venture Partners was early in mobile, so we invested in companies in mobile. BumpTop. If anybody here ever seen BumpTop, you're old like me. All right. That team went on to be purchased by Google. It's still the team that does all the UI for Android. I think from Eclair onwards. I'm trying to remember the exact one, but that team is still there. So that a couple companies sold to Apple, Electronic Arts, Salesforce, et cetera, et cetera. Really great time, right place, right time, and really the entrepreneurs, we all started networking at events like this, and everybody kind of grew together in that ecosystem, which is really exciting. Extreme Labs was a company I started in mobile software development before the iPhone ecosystem came out, and people were like, what are you doing? And then the iPhone came out, and it validated me. It was great. Grew that to about 350 people, sold that in 2013 as well. And that was an exciting journey from nothing to an exit. We sold to a company called Pivotal. Pivotal was a spin-out from VMware EMC, now owned by Dell. VMware just bought Pivotal again after it went public. Stuff I can't understand. But anyways, it was really interesting to get into a big company and see the experience that I had from starting something and how it can play into a much bigger global context. For as much as you want to be frustrated by bureaucracy and process, some of that can be good on a global scale, especially when you have unlimited resources. And unlimited in air quotes, nobody has unlimited resources, but it's really helpful to get those contexts and differences. After Pivotal, started another company called Autonomic in vehicle software. Started that in October 16. In October 17, Ford announced 100% connectivity of all their vehicles. They called me the next day saying it's on your cloud. I was like, okay, great. Our discussion with procurement changed quite rapidly. We were purchased in January of 2018. Through that, I learned a bunch of stuff there. I was also a co-founder of something called Hatch Labs. You've never heard of it except for one project that was in it called Tinder. Maybe you guys have used it, hopefully. I think it's the number 3 source of weddings now, which is pretty exciting. It's still funny, right? I don't know, but they said 3 now, so I'm like, oh.
No one backs that fact up.
I think Match and some other ones are ahead. But anyways, and then just done a bunch of investments over time, and having been an entrepreneur and an investor in both at the same time, there's a bunch of different contexts and elements to this that I'd love to share, and I think it's probably some of the stuff you already know, and maybe some new stuff, and happy to share what I've made tons of mistakes on.
So that's a great high-level overview. So let's unpack a bit. First, I want to get some context of your early careers and decisions you made before you started getting to exit. So, University of Waterloo grad, why'd you go to the Valley?
So, the Valley wasn't a hot place back then. I'll tell you, it was, and I was in a very sexy industry for me. I was in semiconductor design. I couldn't even explain what that was to 9 of the 10 people I grew up with. They're like, Intel? Like the computer? I'm like, no, inside. And they're like, what's inside? It was very interesting. So that was very interesting to me to get into that domain. I found, the advanced engineering, the advanced design, the economics of it, the pace of it was fascinating for me. So I was like, hey, I got to be in this. I'd interned at a company called ATI. If any of you have ever used one of their graphics cards, now AMD. I worked on the graphics cards back in the day. It was fun. It was cool. It was the dream for me.
And you stayed there a few years. You worked with a few different companies in the Valley. Then you came back home to work for basically a venture capital firm. So why?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I didn't grow up in Toronto, but when I had the opportunity to take a job kind of in another startup versus join a VC firm, I was like, these VC firms are really smart. When you don't need money, they're all over you. And when you really do need the money, they're really hard to get. So I was like, I need to go understand that psyche. I need to go work there for a bit and understand what that mentality is all about and why. Because as somebody operating a business, I was like, this makes no sense. So now I got the why it makes sense from that perspective piece. And I stayed there for a number of years, made a bunch of mistakes, had some nice exits. But really the mistakes are what really helped me understand what it is I wanted to do, what it is I thought I could be having fun at and ultimately be good at. So I think that was part of the key. We made, a lot of the mistakes were easy to spot. They were communication issues, they were people issues, they were basic economics issues. And then there were the fundamental physics issues. We just saw them all. And those were eye-opening. I, as a younger person, still do today, I try and understand the tool belt of the people that I'm involved with, and just understand what's really great that they're doing, what it is that I can learn from them. And sometimes you get polarizing people that you go, man, I'm really glad I met that person because I never want to do that, right? And I think that's also an important thing to get done. And through that process, it just felt natural to go start a company. I was like, that's kind of what I never really thought about it. I was just going to do that.
Before we go to starting the company, you glossed over some of it. You said you went to venture capital to learn why they give you money when you don't need it and why they don't give you when you need it. And so that's insight. So not everyone here has to be a VC.
At its simplest form, investors are there to make a return. And their judgment on return sometimes is opportunistic. Maybe there's a good opportunity where they can get some leverage. And sometimes there's a great opportunity that they have to go chase. If you look back historically on returns, and I don't have the data, so don't quote me on it, the biggest returns are generally in the deals that you want to go chase, right? These are the unicorns that have evolved, and the Deca unicorns, and but for every one of those, there's 1,000 that flamed and burned and never really lost all their money. There's lots of people who make lots of money doing deals, getting not the Deca unicorn, but the unicorn, right? And you see the fund returns for a lot of the pensions in these firms over and over and over. So I found there's a balance between fundamentally getting behind a team, an industry, a concept, and fundamentally the opportunity matching the return profile. And I think people get those wrong all the time. They want to be in a deal so bad, they'll pay whatever. And they're chasing to one degree, and then sometimes the deal's like, you should never do it, but they get such good terms that they want to do it, right? And those are all bookends of the spectrum.
So you learned how to think financially. What else did you learn before you started your company? What other takeaways from financing?
What really crystallized for me, I didn't have a business background, but I knew if you're out of cash, you're out, right? Like it's the most basic one, you know. My roommate in school, his parents owned a dollar store. And he explained to me the importance of cash flow. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Then when you multiply that at scale where you're not selling stuff for $1 or $2 and you're selling stuff for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, it's like, okay, the step functions are way bigger. And if you miss one step at any scale, you're done, right? And so understanding that don't be out of cash. Who here is out of cash soon, right? Like that's the toughest place, right? Because your options are limited. So that was one of the things to give yourself some elbow room, some breathing space to make sure you can make some good decisions where you're not under financial duress and stuff like that. So that's one of the key things that I think I took away that I've kept with me the whole way through.
So coming with a startup was extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It, from my understanding, was a service business.
Mm-hmm.
So give us a rationale why this business. Because again, when I hear venture capital and I hear service business, that's not what I think the next step usually is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we stumbled into it. So I had a BlackBerry from work, right? I'm now dating myself. And then I got a personal BlackBerry. I was like, oh, this changed everything. I no longer needed my laptop. I was like, this is so great. My business partner, Sonny, got a Palm. He's like, oh, this is so amazing. We're like, there's going to be big innovation here. Had we been, hindsight 2020, a bit more, I guess, critical of our comments, we probably would have started a product company. But who knows? No regrets, don't look back. We kind of stumbled into the services. Everybody's like, hey, you're the mobile people, and by referral, it just kept growing. And there were dark times, there were tough times, but it just kept growing. We understood there was a market, an opportunity. We understood it very well. We had kind of the world leaders in any industry as our customer at some point. We had, tech, we had Google, Facebook, Microsoft. In media, we had Disney, New York Times, the NBA, the NFL. Like we banks, we had all the. It was just you picked an industry. We understood it because they were all our customers, and they were industry by industry rolling into mobile, and we were right place, right time. A bunch of other things fell luck in our way, and it just scaled beyond us thinking, hey, we should create a product company.
So, a couple of questions again. So, at the beginning, how do you find your co-founder? How do you know it's the right co-founder? And the second question was, what was the ambition? So when you eventually got all these leaders, you got to an exit. Was that what you thought of at the beginning? Was it, hey, this is the right opportunity? So,
yes, there's two questions there. These are good ones. So, who here has a co-founder? Who wishes they had a co-founder? And everybody else is on their own, right? That's the Venn diagram. I knew for myself at the time when we started, I was going to want to work with somebody that had a bit of a yin and yang to my skill set. I think maybe I picked that up along the way through some of the VC stuff, because the ones that were the most successful were the ones where the founders were in the same socioeconomic bracket. They were around the same age, so their demographics lined up quite well. And by, I guess, natural bias, that's where I ended up. We're about the same age. We were kind of the same places in our career. What I remember back is one of the CEO conferences at the VC firm. One of the founders came up with lessons learned, and he goes, I started my first company out of school, and the co-founder was 25 years older than me. And he's like, great, I got all this wisdom, all this knowledge. And he goes, then it was terrible. I go, what happened? He goes, well, the first weekend we got going, I was at the office and he was at the cottage with his family. And I was like, okay, then what? He goes, then winter came around and I was at the office and he was getting winter tires for his vehicle, right? It was just different things, different times, different people. I'm not saying those are not right things or wrong things to do, but you kind of want to, for me, I knew I wanted to be somebody who was in the same bucket and willing to do what I was willing to do at the time to do it. And that really helped me solidify. I had met my co-founder years before because he lived in Silicon Valley. We'd met then through a mutual friend. We'd kept in touch over the years. We'd swapped a bunch of ideas, and we really kind of set our sights, months before we actually started to work together formally. But we put ourselves on a path to go work together.
Okay, and then when you started a company, what was your grand ambition? If you were to sit down day two, what were you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I wish I had you're going to look for a silver bullet. There's no silver bullet here.
I don't think there are silver bullets.
It's the proverbial lead bullet, right? It was grind through it, find out where you can get to, find an opportunity. It wasn't like we had put up on the board like, a financial outcome or anything like that. We knew there was an industry burgeoning. We knew, and we were just a few blocks away. Toronto as an ecosystem was burgeoning. A lot of talented people were in different industries affected by mobile, tech, carriers, media, sports, music. Toronto had as the mecca for all those things in this country. I'm going to get a bunch of pushback on that, but it has those skills and all those abilities. And we knew for mobile that was really a melange of people that you had to get together in a room to work on these problems. Then as we started scaling, we were like, okay, well, where's this going? What's this going to be? And we kind of had this cool team. We were doing cool stuff. We're like, okay, well, we really need to build a company now because we're at 25 people. Christmas party went from one pizza to buy out of a restaurant. We got something here, right? And that was part of the formalization of, okay, now we have to build a company. What are some of the things we need to think about in terms of step function scale, skills, market movements, and all that kind of stuff. And that's really when it triggered for us that this wasn't just a fun hobby or having the time of our life. This was really a business opportunity that could be quite fruitful if done right.
So give us some idea of the growth, because it took you from inception to sell 5 years. So was it every year steady growth? How did the business change over time?
Okay, it's a great question. So here's how to linear growth business where every day was just incrementally better than yesterday. Yeah, that's what I figured, right? Who's had a day where they went backwards? Yeah, everybody. If you don't have your hand up, you're lying. So I think in the first year, it was 2008-ish.
That's not a fire alarm, is it?
I think somebody's stealing a TV. So basically, and I wouldn't know that for other reasons than I've heard it before. So basically, 2008, mobile was becoming a thing. People had mobile devices. We're like, hey, this is kind of cool. It was tough to go to people and say, hey, we kind of build these mobile experiences. What's that? People had the game Chicken on their BlackBerry. That was the best thing they had going on. And that to me was kind of the Pong moment, right? I'm like, Chicken, it's so good. It's like Pong, look, right? And really, 2009 came. The iPhone SDK came out in the summer of 2008. That got us very excited. Lots of consumer experiences started building. It started with, the lightsabers, the beer drinking, the fart apps, these things, right? There was a delight amongst users that was there, even though the apps were completely inconsequential. So we knew, well, what if we could actually turn user delight into something productive, right? And that's when enterprises started showing up in 2009. A bit of a recession hit. That was tough. But because we were in a leading edge service business, we could kind of predict how it was coming back because we knew who was starting to reach out, who was at the conferences, and who was actually doing work. So who here has a conference related to their business or industry? Everybody should have their hand up. This is a great venue. It's not a conference, in my opinion, for this stuff. If you're in any business that you want to grow at, my experience has been, and if you're dealing with businesses, you need to be at those conferences. You need to be there a day early, a day late. You need to have as many meetings as possible because people who go to those conferences do work. It's incredible how many calendars you can get on at a show versus trying to get on somebody's conference when you're in town. Totally different game. The ability for somebody wanting to do a transaction or partner or talk about something in a conference, they're always kind of blown away by the show. They're in a different zone. They're like, hey, this is great. I want to be the biggest star next year, right? This is the mentality that people have, and you can really get stuff done. So 2009, we did a show called, it's no longer there. It was one of the telecom shows in Vegas. And I remember I sat at the Wynn in one of the restaurants at a table, and I had meetings from the morning all the way to the evening, a dinner, 3 days in a row. And I was like, okay, this is something. This is happening. So these are the kinds of things that kind of, tools of the trade. That was an indication that we had something and we should be doing something.
Well, let's fast forward. 2013, you sold the business.
Yep.
How long was that? how did that come about? Was it something you planned? Was it something you were exploring for a while?
You know, we'd been offered to be purchased by a few household names in 10, 11, 12. We entertained the idea, but you know, one thing I have on exits that's really important, and you know, take this with the bias, a grain of salt. Like, you have to find the right home for things, because it's not about exiting and getting the T-shirt. T-shirts are nice. Everybody should have a T-shirt. But like, what's really valuable is getting an experience through the journey of getting to an exit, the process of the exit, and just as importantly, if not more importantly, your journey after the exit. Because life doesn't end the second you sell the company. I remember the day after the sale, one of the younger folks came up to me and was like, "How does it feel today?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, I was up all night with kids changing diapers. It was miserable." He's like, "Wow, come on, man, this must be great." I'm like, "It doesn't really change, right? It's a milestone. It felt nice. It was good, but like life kept going." You know, I don't think we planned for an exit, but the exit opportunity we had with Pivotal felt right. You know, Rob, who was the CEO of Pivotal now, not before, he was a friend of ours. He helped us start. He really understood our business. Paul Moritz, if anybody knows Paul Moritz, he was the CEO at the time. You know, he spent a couple hours with us, and I was kind of half mesmerized, half blown away on how real he was. So for anybody who doesn't know Paul was Bill Gates' right-hand person in the 80s and 90s. He goes, "Oh, I only got 2 claims to fame." I'm like, "What are they?" He goes, "Windows and Office." He then went on to be the VMware CEO for its rise. So he's done a lot, but his ability to just be real and talk about things in everyday terms and stuff was really mind-blowing. So the opportunity to work with him as well, and really to grow our personas that way was exciting. You know, we had a path forward with or without that. Right time, right opportunity, and it's a bit of a bet because you don't know how it plays out. So it felt right. No regrets.
Can I read a couple of things into what you said?
Sure.
One was, it sounds like you had control of your destiny. It sounded like you were cash flow positive, or you weren't burning through money. Is that correct?
We had a really good business.
Okay. So you had the opportunity to decide when to sell. You had multiple opportunities. So, and what I heard here, it wasn't necessarily the best offer, it was the right offer.
It was the right offer. Best is very qualitative. Obviously, people read the headline and they go, "Holy shit, that was big," right? Pardon the French, but like, the numbers related to some reason. There's a reason the numbers are going up. It's because there was something there that somebody thought they could make bigger in their context, in their framework. So it was the right fit for not only us, but more importantly, all the employees. We had hundreds of people, right? And the Pivotal after the acquisition with us was 1,000. So we brought a third of the company to the table, right? And that was a big deal. We had to get that right. It's never seamless. You're not going to please everybody, so don't feel like you can do that in a multi-100-person company. Even in a company over 20, it's going to be hard, right? Like at 20, you should get it right. Anybody who's doing one of these acqui-hires, you should get it right. But these are just kind of the things that play out over time, circumstance, and nobody has a book on how to evaluate an exit, right? So you kind of have to get insights, come to events like this, meet people, talk to your peers, understand what exits are good and bad, and kind of evaluate for yourself on your own personal scorecard what you want to have happen. You know, I've seen a lot of people exit because they were just like, I've come to the end of the journey, I can't do it anymore, and they personally tapped out, and that's fine too, right? Like, that's totally okay.
So, talking about that headline number, I don't think that's usually what everyone focuses on. And 2 questions: how important was that, and what was the other factors that you considered? So I heard taking care of employees was one.
Yep.
What was important to you, and how important is that headline number?
Well, look, I think for myself, and I don't want to be presumptuous for others, but usually your first exit's the game-changing one. I don't know if that's it changes your life financially. So that's something, right? It's not a bad thing. It's allowed me to do a couple things. I sit courtside at basketball now. It's great. I have no regrets. Yeah, so it's fun. But at the end of the day, like, whether you have 20 billion or 10 billion, do you think your lifestyle is any different? Right? I just don't think it is. So you have to kind of figure out for yourself, if I gave you 1,000 times more money today or 10,000 times more money than you have today, it's hard to contextualize what that means for your life. I think it's very difficult. And it's very personal. Like, do you want to take care of your family? Do you have kids? You know, do you have any philanthropic things that you want to do? These are just all things that you can kind of machinate through yourself. But you know, don't do it for free. Don't sell the company without getting a payday out of it if you can, right? I think that's important. I think that's the lesson you give everybody there, right? So I think that's super critical.
So you knew how to do this because you were a venture capitalist. You've seen some other exits along the way. What are things that have gone wrong? What should I avoid when my next time I'm trying to sell?
I had the joy of seeing many crappy deals because in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, there were lots of crappy deals. Like the last startup I was at, we gave it away. We had no choice. We had raised $125 million. We had $1 billion valuation in the early 2000s, and that all went away, right? So I saw the zero hero zero very quickly, right? So you know that you have windows in which you can exercise and do things. So I saw bad. I saw really bad. I saw, you know, bottom of the barrel, bottom feeder types. I saw people who were willing to strategically overpay, and it seems to be strategically overpay, but when you go talk to the folks who did the acquisition, like that was super cheap. Like, you know, BumpTop as an example, I thought was a great deal for BumpTop. Like Google got away with a steal, right? Like in hindsight, but that's part of the calculus, right? What's a big number to which side?
What other monetary? What I think most people don't understand what commitments you're making post-acquisition. So maybe A, should you do an earnout, and B, what should you watch for post-acquisition?
Yeah, I think you should. I don't know if you've done this, but I think if you do like a session with some transactional lawyer, like I'm sure we could go through it too, like, you know, indemnities, holdbacks, you know, stock cash, all that stuff. That's probably another 3-hour session, which we'd have a great time grinding through. But you know, when you get to negotiating the transaction, this is where, you know, the two states of startup life, misery and euphoria, right? Like you're getting to that euphoric state, and it's short, but you're getting there, and you're starting to really feel it. You got to really keep yourself level-headed and make sure you're not getting to a place you're not. You know, that's one of those key pieces that I see. When you really sign up to do one of these deals, you're signing up and you're committing to the buyer that you're going to fulfill obligations, and you're going to do your best. And they may be buying, you know, your company to create a new business, to augment an existing business, or they're going to take your team and sprinkle it, you know, across 3 or 4 different product lines. Like, that's on you. And to the extent that that doesn't work outside of forces that are uncontrollable by you, it's you. You are the one responsible. You are the one that making sure that everybody ends up in a place where they're just as excited or more the day after the acquisition to get in there and change the world than they were the day before. That's nobody else's obligation.
I want to open up to questions to the audience soon for you and Bryce to answer, but I have 2 more questions before I do that. One is, talk about your second big exit. It happened real fast. What was different there? Why was Ford right to acquire?
Yeah, so kind of, I'll give you the candid piece here. So Autonomic was a vehicle connectivity company, still is. We had a relationship with the family and the company through working with Pivotal. And I said, hey, the future of the auto business is, you know, I wasn't rocket science. I'm like, it's on demand, it's autonomous, and it's electric. And then I saw people taking notes, and I'm like, okay, they already knew this. Then I'm like, hey, like you should really build a roadmap to getting to these 3 phases, and their different pillars. You know, car connectivity is a must, you know, and you kind of build on that. And I was like, hey, you know, we had a great discussion, great comments around how to do it. And then I had this weird meeting one day where they're like, this is awesome. I'm like, okay. And then there was an awkward pause, and I'm like, aha, I sensed it. This was the opportunity for me to say, I should go build this thing. So that's what I did. You know, a few of us from the old gang got together, said, hey, vehicle connectivity is going to be a big deal. We, in our first year of business, had a 8-figure plus contract with Ford, and you know they announced 100% connectivity. So let me give you context of 100% connectivity. There's a proxy of connectivity costs about $1 a vehicle per month. Ford, as one of the top 5 OEMs, ships, I don't know, 6 million vehicles a month, or a year. So now you can start doing the math on what $1 per vehicle per month is. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So we had a business. So the next challenge for us as a business, and it was just an algebra exercise once we figured out the strategy, is well, if we could go replicate that with a VW, a Honda, a Toyota, we just needed one more, because then we'd have 2 9-figure customers. And that was the calculus. If you have 2 9-figure customers, yeah, you got cost per concentration, but man, that is a mega business. So the calculus came down to well, what was Ford willing to pay to have us, do a different journey than we had set out initially, and that was nice discussion.
Cool. I'm going to end it there because I got this another time's up, but I want Bryce, can you come back up? I want to open up the 2 questions from the audience. Can we get a round of applause for both speakers, please?
So I think resilience is correlated with a why, and you guys have kind of been through the ringer. What's both your whys? Why do you do it?
So it took me a while to figure this out, and don't take this the wrong way. It's kind of what I love doing. I can't really imagine me doing something else.
I couldn't work for anyone else.
Oh, great. I mentioned to Bryce at the stretch break, I read quickly your last slide, which I'm sorry you didn't get to. You talked specifically, well, the points talked to the importance of STEM and teaching more at school, I'm assuming the university level, with respect to marketing and sales for scale-ups. And also, so I'd like to hear more about what you think we can do in our economy, our system. And you had a really wonderful point there with respect to, having entrepreneurs not necessarily have to pay back any kind of educational loan, because they're paying back in lots of different ways. And I think that one of the reasons that Toronto is a little slow, maybe, in challenging Silicon Valley and other places is because we don't have a good enough communication structure between the startups, scale-ups, money, and schools.
So, a lot to unpack there. On that last slide you're referring to, first of all, I wrote a certain number of points, and I've used that slide a lot, and it's been built out as people provide commentary and so on. So very specifically, the student loan comment was, I was in Alberta, speaking in Calgary at District Ventures, and I said I had my things to think about with respect to growing in the innovation economy. And a guy came up to me after, and he said the biggest reason that we hear that Alberta students are not starting businesses, we have done the research, is the student loan debt that they have to start paying back within a prescribed period of time after graduation. So that just went straight on that slide. When he had done the research and had the data, I said that seems pretty clear to me. So I think a deferral program, you gotta put some brackets around defining what entrepreneurship is and so on. But there is a absolute no-brainer there to me. And look, we can even get into cost of tuition and how we defray that downward, and there's a whole other discussion there. If you saw some other parts of the slides, there was talk about is tuition different for, no offense to poets, but versus business and STEM. So that's a whole other discussion.
Did you get credit for it?
Right. And with respect to the first point, so if you look at the perceived weaknesses in our ecosystem, and it's not unique only to Canada, but we are viewed as basically horrifyingly bad at sales and marketing, and particularly non-Canadian sales and marketing. So there's so much discussion and scuttle around the ecosystem around how you think more globally, and in particular around that function. And so that's the point there. There are people who want to endow chairs on this in universities, and they want to drive this way more and more and more. And we are 100% aligned that my 4 dimensions of assessing an investment, commercial is second to team, and ahead of product, and commercial is weak, and we need to get that stronger. With respect to STEM, so I think the data shows, and you have to go in a few different directions here. One, our school system does not have the greatest STEM tools to teach. Our teachers, no offense to the great education that we have, are not always the best versed in how to teach STEM. And then the other problem that we have is that there are problems that happen as you're going through school at certain ages, in particular with females. The age of 9 onward, they want to channel away from STEM due to certain pressures. And I'm not a parent, but this is the data that I've seen. And they veer off into areas that are non-STEM for a variety of reasons. And how do we bring them back? And the list goes on and on and on. And there are hundreds of organizations trying to attack this. I'm sure we can be more systematic about it, but we just need more of that earlier, smarter, better, faster, outcomes-based, figure out where the pain points are, so on and so forth.
Thanks, Bryce, for sharing your story. I found it very interesting, and been waiting a while to hear it. A couple of things that you touched on about the oligarchy and the actions that were taken, to sort of thwart the activities of an up-and-coming. And, I could see how frustrated you are about that part of it. And I just think, that overt activity that, is sort of anti-consumerist and sort of anti-democratic. Like, has anything been done to address that type of behavior, or what came with that?
It's a great question. So if you want to start talking oligopolies, we can go for a while, but we'll save that but Canada, again, I don't want to, bang on us too much. We're a comfortable country, but we are also a country of barriers to foreign competition, and let's look around at our big industries. Let's look at banking, let's look at telecom, let's look at airline, let's look at rail, let's look at money management, let's look at every frickin' industry. And what that does is it jacks up prices for the consumer, and it means you really actually want to be shareholders of these companies, and families should not be the leading shareholders of these companies. So look, here's the sad thing, is that not enough has been done. Okay, so you can unpack industries and you can say, where are we? And let's use telecom, obvious example here. So what happened in telecom, when we were taken out, you have now the three big guys. And then you have Shaw, Videotron, and Eastlink. And so you have, again, I don't want to call them, they're kind of members of the club. They're more aggressive because they started more recently and they have to fight, but they're members of a club. And they're not pure play and blah, blah, blah. And they're not foreign financed with people that would be more aggressive and so on. And that is, sadly, in many ways, a hallmark of much of our system. And look, you could go in two different ways, okay? I am the guy who will always say we want to bring the fight and we want to get more competition. This was an interesting contrapoint to that, so we'll go with the counter on this. We had a COO at Wind from Italy, from one of our sister companies, Wind Italy, for those who know, there's a Wind brand in Italy. He came over for a couple of years. And after 6 months in the country, I became good friends with him, so we would have these chats and have some drinks and so on. And he said, I don't even know if you guys should change. This country is the most comfortable country in the world. Like, keep the barriers up and just make enough money. You pay your tax, lots of it, and just be comfortable. And I'm like, no, man, back that up. There's an innovation economy around us that's going to dust us if we're not ahead of that. And actually, here, I'll give you one other example. Elon Musk is going to launch 10,000 satellites in the next few years. Okay, something called Starlink, part of SpaceX. He's got the Falcon Heavy. He can right now put 60 flat-pack new developed satellites into orbit per launch. Okay, so he's got the heavy rocket and he's got the satellites, and those satellites are being put up there to create internet connectivity down. So, look, there will be many interesting technological changes in our future, and we will see where it goes.
Hello. Great stories showing the tenacity and the drive to with both of your stories. Fantastic for someone that's early stage in their career, looking for their first exit. One thing that I'm really interested in is the tactics around understanding your exit. So seeing the ups and downs of the roller coaster ride, whether you sell really quickly, surprisingly, or whether you have the all the challenges that you had with Global Live. For both of you, how do you coach junior or first-time entrepreneurs about the tactical aspects of exits or where they're taking their company?
What was your name? Sorry.
Quinn
And
Lawson.
and your company?
Working on it.
Working on it. Okay. So number one thing, always be advertising wearing expensive clothes. And your company t-shirt's the most expensive shirt you can ever own. So I was trying to see if you had one on or something. Look, I think working through these types of things on an exit if it's just a figment of what you think is the realm of possible, you want to fantasize about how great it is, how good it is. But when you start peeling that back layer by layer and kind of working backwards to what does it mean to having this exit, my advice that I give to others is the same advice I give to myself. Best companies are bought, not sold. And let me just break that down slightly. When somebody approaches you to buy your company, it is a much different discussion when you're out there soliciting others to buy your company, especially in the smaller company startup phases. It's a much different discussion. So if you're doing the right things on, creating awareness, building a killer product, a killer experience, these things, and people start to notice you, that is the best thing you can do for the value of your company and the likelihood of an exit that makes sense. That's it. I think anything else from there is kind of secondary, tertiary, and onward.
The thing I would add to that is you are not an expert in selling your company, and you should not think that you're an expert in selling your company. And there is a very well-defined playbook with some best practices, like you would think about for all of the elements of your business. You do not walk in and try to run that process on your own single-handedly without a proper advisory network around you and proper professionals around you. It is a hard-earned, sweat-driven set of skills.
Mistake laden too for me.
Yeah, we've done that too.
Yeah.
Hi guys, thanks so much. This is awesome. I thought that both of you had kind of an interesting point on people and how important it was for both of your success stories. So I'd love to know your opinion on how do we keep our top talent in Canada, as well as how do we recruit that amazing top talent we have globally as well?
So I think when there's a dawn of an industry, like mobile was a dawn of an industry, Toronto had a lot of appealing things like I talked about of the cultural diversity and the mix of education that was required to make the good experiences. So that was something that I was like, okay, we're early, but we can define things. We took people who were doing graphics design, slide decks for investors and said, you guys should be defining how people use phones, right? And that was the kind of jump that we made for talent. And I thought, if you can do that at the dawn of industries and keep pushing that through the maturation of them, it'd be a really valuable skill. And then at some point, like when there was startup meetups, 10, 12 years ago, it might have been this size, it might have been once every 3-6 months. Now you can probably go to one of these a week on different industries, maybe one a day if you're in a bunch of different areas. Like that's how much it's grown. And that snowball is what's really gonna keep us really driving and having that critical mass talent.
Just a side note. I think of talent in a flywheel way, to use a current popular term. And things feed on each other, and then they turn a certain way, dawn of new industry, and then they start getting momentum as a bunch of different things happen around the ecosystem. This is part of it. The way capital has flowed into the ecosystem, early Amars Ventures to VCAP to Vicky, to then translating to accelerators and translating to educational institutions and translating back to a bit of repatriation here. And some scale-ups that have had some success and exits, and people coming back and doing this again, and inspiring and building, and the comfort of being able to take the risk and leave your job and do this, and then all of that flywheel. Actually, and the interesting thing about that flywheel, it creates global super cities, and Toronto is becoming one of those. So then all the cultural and all the restaurants, even just to go to the music scenes and the social dynamics and so on, and you become, and that's the ultimate flywheel to me. And that's kind of all of that.
Last question.
Thank you. There's no pressure in that. Guys, thank you so much for your time and for all this. I really appreciate it. My question was going to be, you talked about all of those challenges and barriers you had faced to success, and all these times where everything seemed like, how are we possibly going to get through this or overcome this to keep the company growing, to succeed, to then get to that exit. When you're taking these risks and you're pouring like everything you have into these companies for that success, like what helps you keep that focus and keep that positivity to overcome those barriers to kind of keep going, where most people otherwise would give up, sell it for parts, get rid of it? What helps you overcome that?
So there's kind of and I've had time to go through this, so I'll give you my latest thought on it. One, if you yourself aren't mentally and physically capable at your best, you're probably not making the best decisions. That's something I've learned underhand, like just over time. Like if you're not putting yourself first on these things, how can you expect to lead others into the storm? Like that to me is the number one thing that I probably learned a hard way, and now that I've learned it, I won't compromise on that. And it may seem selfish, but I'm very selfish on that. So you yourself have to be ready to fight the battle. Two, there are no books or in school on how to do this stuff, right? It's all kind of an apprentice, as I call it. I think you can read some books. I think, Andy Grove had a good one. I thought, Ben Horowitz's update of it was pretty good. I mean, it was 10 years ago. That was a good one. The $1 Trillion Coach was a good one recently. There's a couple of these books that are helpful, but if you don't have the experience to latch on to the stories they're telling, it's hard. What you can do is, peer group. So this is a peer group, right? And I think the most valuable thing that I get out of these peer groups is the just ability to discuss, understand what people are doing, what mistakes they've made that they can share. Because half of being successful at a startup is not making some of the easy mistakes to avoid, right? That's your statistical winner right there. Don't blow your brain out in the first week, right? Like that's kind of find out what those are, get this insight. So I think having the people connection, A, with yourself, B, with peers, I can't understate the importance of that. So I think that to me is one of the things that you have to have right. The grit, the perseverance, the ability to get through it. Part of it was naive. Like I didn't realize how bad 2008 was. I didn't know, right? I look back now, I'm like, oh, that was pretty bad, right? Well, we survived. And when we survived and we knew we were on the other side, we went from, what is it, wartime to peacetime, right? Like it was a different mode that we were operating in, and all the lessons we learned in wartime, we augmented and accelerated in peacetime, and they were super successful, right? But if you think you're going to do this and it's going to be linear and easy every day, easier and easier, I don't want to lie to you, it's not going to happen that way, right? So you guys are all here because you want to make that challenge and that change. So my thing to you is the company's never done until you're done. So I'll park it there.
Yep. So just to frame it, probably some similarities. In the worst of the worst, we got up every day, we put one foot in front of the other, we knew what the tactical requirements were, and we kind of just did it. And we did it as a team, supporting each other with our diverse skills and so on and so forth. Point one. Point two is, look, you have to put a bit of a candid lens on the world too. Wind was large, it had a gravitational pull, it was an infrastructure business, it had spectrum, it had a lot of things and it had a lot of customers. So the downside case was interesting to think about. Okay, the bankruptcy risk didn't worry me that much. Candidly, the worst part of the Wind project for me, if I could summarize, was we almost lost the recapitalization to another party, and that would have taken it out of our hands and really changed our outcome. So that was the worst for me. So wins gravitational pull and looking at it objectively, knowing that thing wasn't just gonna filter off into the sunset. And that brings a corollary point where, I've talked to a lot of people in the ecosystem about this though, you do need to put a little bit of practicality. If you're 10 years into a business at $1 million in revenue, and you burned prime years of your life building the wealth generator and so on and so forth, there's a point at which that needs to stop as well. So I'll throw the corollary point. And then I agree with Amar on the step back to look at the macro and the strategic. And actually, I've read Good to Great, I've read The $1 Trillion Coach, I've read High Output Management, a lot of these things. I've been talking a lot in the ecosystem where there's a view, particularly at the investor level, that the tech ecosystem hasn't gone through the same business school programs as much as some of the more traditional corporate crowd. And they've lost a bit of the fundamentals of business because they've never experienced it, and they come into companies quite inexperienced. So there's actually an impetus on the entrepreneurs, I think, to at least start getting a field guide and that mentor and advisory network to help build you up. Those would be 4 or 5 things that come to mind.